Hello again. This is Serp from the Breakfast Club server, where we recently had a potluck event. Customs Potluck? That's what it's called, yeah. Essentially, it's an event where we have everyone bring in their favorite customs, fight against each other, swap around between matches, and then at the end vote on a character they wanted to hear a bit more about the design of. Last month we had Gearface, our usual commentator, hold that interview, but we do still have Aevusonian here this month with Yuel, who won.
I'm Aevusonian.
That's true. And we also have Rose, who brought you all to the event.
Hello.
Hello. So, just to get right into it, Yuel's from Granblue Fantasy Versus, which is a game that we have several characters from. Uh, I'll start by talking to Aevusonian, so you don't have to talk about the season mechanics yet if you want. But how do you describe this adaptation of Yuel in terms of what they do in Exceed with relation to how they fight in Source?
Um, well, the most obvious connection is that Yuel Source is a character who can go between her basic form and a stance, and the stance has some pretty devastating mix-up options, and you can kind of flow into and out of it using your specials.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Exceed adaptation uh, literally adapts that as giving all of your moves the ability to exceed. If they're critical, you can spend an extra gauge to flip over, and then your exceed side gives you a couple of ways to take advantage of being on it, both of which are pretty darn good and allow you to keep up your pressure, do a mix up, or reposition a bit.
So Kielman's stances, pressure mix-ups. I think this is an interesting question in the context of Yule because you've mentioned before, Yule's gone through several different mechanical identities in Granblue Rising over the course of its patch history. Is there a specific one this is meant to represent, I guess? Or is it...
Yeah, so the current iteration of UL is a lot more leaning towards mix-ups. She has a really devastating high-low in the current version of the game. But when I played the character, it was a bit different because a lot more of the focus was on. She was still very much a rushdown, but it was a lot more pressure focused rather than mix-up focused.
I
Your
see.
50-50 wasn't quite as good. But you had a lot more ways to keep plus frames, minor plus frames, like only +1, +2, but keep those and stay at ranges where you can threaten pretty fast and damaging buttons that can lead into combos. Um, and so that version of the UL or that version of UL is the one that I'm a lot more familiar with, and also the one that this is uh, intending to be a lot closer to.
Makes sense. Is that mostly just because, like, you want to be able to apply your own experience playing her, or you think it's just, like, a more fun design?
Um, column A, column B, and also a little bit of column C, which is just that I think if you were to take the average of UL across the versions of the games, it probably looks closer to that than the pure like mix-up character.
Makes sense. Okay, so on that note, how did you get started on figuring out how to design this mix-up heavy character? I do see they have a lot of options. I
You
guess
have
it's
a
a
lot
little
of
more unusual,
options.
but
Yeah. Um. Well. Uh. I guess the first thing that I did with the character was the character card,
mm,
because I knew that I wanted the character to be flipping between the forms because that's pretty thematic to what she does in Source. And so then with that, I knew that she probably is going to have plus speed as an option that is available to her. Um, Eventually, I settled on the hit draw two on this, so she's getting high econ in when she's doing this. High card flow because you're
yeah,
spending 2 gauge to do this, right?
kind of just change
Um,
cards, yeah,
yeah.
delayed.
You're getting your change cards, but you're getting speed. And so I knew that whatever the mix up was, I kind of wanted it to lean into the fact that having +1 speed does very relevant things for you.
Mm,
So the first part of it is then the part that isn't a mix up at all. Hanarashi was one of the first cards I designed, which is a really BS card that does everything. Um, assuming you go first, you don't lose. You just win the strike. Um, and when you put +1 speed on this, suddenly it is on curve. So this is a 145 with before advance 2 that says hit win the strike and gain advantage. Uh, but that one's relatively low payoff. And so the idea is that the other options that you have are a bit higher payoff. So
mm,
You could go for Third Dance Jinka or Third Dance Xian, which are your IA and IG buttons respectively. Notably, the IG button is also gaining advantage and drawing a card itself. So you're throwing a 4-speed IG that, if you're critting it, is drawing 3, gaining advantage.
It kind of also follows the pattern of going resource neutral-ish with spending a gauge.
Yeah. And so getting a fat 3 cards on top of like beating a sweep or a focus or whatever you beat with this, and going into another turn of your own where, you could crit for one of these other cards to gain advantage, flip back over if you have the gauge, and just keep up this really mean advantage chain where you're also getting all your gauge back as cards.
Yeah.
So you've got the safe, slightly less rewarding option and the more risky, less rewarding options. Or sorry, more risky, more rewarding options over here. And that's roughly the mix-up shape, because when I knew that I wanted it to be a mix-up based on gaining the bonus speed, that meant to me that, because speed is a very consistent stat, that meant to me that the mix-up should be based around a single card that is more consistent than the rest. And so your baseline performance is very solid, very consistent. You know that Hanarashi will probably do completely fine if you're at range 3 and you throw this out while exceeded.
Makes sense. It's like a decent mid speed if you're not exceeded.
Yeah. And then the rest of the mix-up kind of falls into place. You've got the DP to cover for your 2 slower mid-speeds. This is the least rewarding card out of all of them for the mix-up, but it is still 4 power if you're critting it. So it's not like it's bad.
Pretty reliable.
Yeah. And then you have the last part that's like actually conceivably part of the mix-up is Fox Flame, which is a slow that has the weird property of trading very neutrally into basically everything. And so Hanarashi will consistently win the strike for mediocre reward. Fox Flame will very consistently have mediocre reward. You basically never win the strike, but you're not going to lose it. Whereas Hanarashi could theoretically lose to like EX Assault on defense. Fox Flame sure doesn't do that. And with crit after gain advantage, even if the opponent crosses out or dives over you,
yeah,
EX5, I suppose.
If it gets hit by dive, it might be sad, but
yeah.
Somewhat reliable.
The reward is very conceivable. And then the last card is a fast dive that can become another copy of Assault, but a bit longer range.
Totsugeki. I guess this is like 5 speed without using your UA, so it is conceivably a mix-up option on backside, but kind of reinforcing this shape that you want to be dominant. I think it's...
I mean, it helps the DP, right, at range 2, because this is another on-curve option on your backside.
That is true,
and this was a little more rewarding than the DP.
Yep. It does do that.
So it kind
at the cost of course, losing to enemy DPs.
Was a function of both 2 and 3. I know this is a common range for, like, rushdown characters to operate at. I know I peeked a bit at your feedback. Something else that's stood out to a lot of people, apart from, like, having these mix-up options, is the force costs on the boosts.
Yeah.
Any notes about those designs?
There are 3 boosts here that all have a 2 force cost. All 3 of these are specifically named after the specials that she gets while she is in stance in Source. And the idea there is that her stance is a lot more freeform in Source. You have a lot of ways in and out of it, and you can kind of just tie them together however you want. And so, for me, representing those specials as boosts was like a non-negotiable thing that had to be, if they are not attacks in the kit, they have to be boosts.
Yeah.
And the way I wanted to tie that directly to the backside, which is, ostensibly actually changing stance, is that, oh, cool, you hit draw 2, very convenient. That's exactly what these cost, right? That's not literally supposed to be a combo that you're doing necessarily, but more so a thematic tie, like, okay, these are 2 force boosts because these are the 2 cards that you're getting. You're using the stance and you're going into one of these specials to end the stance, and then hypothetically you're going into another stance.
Makes sense.
And then these 3 boosts themselves are designed more or less around being additional copies of your normal boosts of Fierce, Swift, and Defend, or Fierce, Light, and Defend. Sorry.
Yeah.
With additional, benefits tacked on because they're 2 force. But that's kind of to. I mentioned earlier, I think a big part of Yuel's identity from the version of Yuel that I understand is pressure and neutral, where she isn't actually a neutral god, but she has really consistent ways to keep up her position in neutral, and make like actually contesting it a little tricky. She doesn't have great recovery options when it comes to that.
Nothing too safe.
But yeah, if you have a lead over your opponent, which in Exceed, could conceivably be you have a bunch more cards than your opponent, you can spend those on things that the opponent can't actually boost to the same quality for a lot of characters.
Makes sense. So it's more that they're strong because you want them to like represent this big swing that you like your Exceed reinforces, rather than like you think she needs. I guess like these do support her options a lot because like these are consistency. This is payout, and you have like fast attacks, but it's more like they cost a lot, so you can make them good.
Yeah.
That's always fun. I guess any notes on the other 3 special boosts at least.
Oh, Quick Attack is actually secretly Preemptive Strike in this kit. It's really gross.
Oh, that is true.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. It's there because I wanted her to have an additional way to access the speed so that she can play her mix-up in a slightly less rewarding way. And that also does have the tack-on effect of, if she's in Exceed mode, oh my gosh, her initiated strikes can get really scary really fast.
And she reverts on cleanup, right? So, okay.
When she initiates.
Yeah, so the opponent's like has to deal with it eventually, but there is a threat coming.
Yeah. Rite of Dawn is an econ boost. It's the one that's on Noelle. It felt very right for her to draw and strike. That's about where the design of this starts and ends.
Yeah, and it's on the attack that, like you mentioned, is your kind of core threat. So,
yep, it's on the attack that's decently consistent and decently rewarding, and is the core thing that your mix-up kind of revolves around. So you can yield that to go get more cards. Especially useful when you're not actually being like able to engage your engine and get your speeds flowing. Yeah, also nice as a casual, your hand just got parried, need to get rid of this normal. Oh, how nice, I can do a bit of action compression, CC, and strike.
Oh, it's a fun strat. Yeah. And then that's a bit more econ on this
and then Prelude
is...
Dance Taika is her actual econ, because she doesn't have that much that isn't CCing. It's all very econ neutral. This is based on the Bang Boost, the one on his kick. This one gains an additional draw for 2 reasons. One, I think she needs the additional draw. And 2, I don't think that boost would be very good on this character without the additional draw. This character does care a lot about the micro positioning, but she doesn't quite have the kind of evasive tools that Bang could hypothetically use alongside it. Her tools generally are not spaced so that she can avoid many things meaningfully. She can almost always avoid focus. That is a thing.
Lots of movements.
With her mid speeds that would just cleanly beat the focus anyway.
Yeah.
I guess
to go on a brief tangent, I know you brought it out to Bang a bit before we started this. Is there a direct comparison you want to draw with like the special design?
Yeah. There is actually some Bang DNA here, which is that Bang also has this kind of centralizing mix-up, where you have this unstoppable palm thrust that is really generically good and consistent and basically always win strikes, to some degree of winning. And then you have the riskier, more rewarding button with Void Tempest Kick. And then you have these buttons that kind of support your mix-up, where these aren't actually cards that you love playing, but they do very relevant things in making sure, oh, they can't cross out of my unstoppable palm thrust because I have these, or they can't just play focus, even though I'm down on Void Tempests, this is covering that role.
Makes sense. I know Ken usually has like the same thing going on with like you want to avoid axe kick, but then everything else kills you.
Yep. Same idea with Ken.
Yeah.
Having, Ken has his DP and his axe kick and knee bash. Similar sort of mix up of fast, mid, speed, slow.
Makes sense. Okay. Interesting that we saved ultras for now because I think people usually tend to talk about those first, but
that might be true. Yeah.
How do you feel about these?
Well, from what I saw, I really liked how they were playing. Notably, this one, one change that I already have listed for the character, because this character is still in progress. Potluck was a good bit of testing and feedback. This hit effect should probably be on Initiate, because I wanted this to be like another side of the, oh yeah, I'm faster than you, yes, and I can hit you, yes, and I'm gaining advantage, yes, and I'm drawing cards, yes, kind of mix up shape. So this will almost always hit.
That is true.
And you're almost always going to gain the advantage. You're definitely drawing cards if you're gaining the advantage, right?
It's kind of a. I know Geo has a similar shape of Ultra. I think it just doesn't have to draw, but yeah, she has draw.
Well, Geo has drawn herself.
Yeah. Hers is only 1 gauge.
Yeah,
that's true.
But this is in a similar position to like Bang Style Shuriken as well. A very similar role to Starlit Sky in the kit. This one is just bigger and faster and draws more.
Yeah.
Starlit Sky does notably hit harder, but Starlit Sky is not 7 speed attack when you're initiating with it a whole lot stated. Pretty relevant number.
Yeah.
As for the other Ultra, this is an Ultra that I haven't seen played much. I'm fairly sure it's good, but we gotta see a little bit more testing of the character. The idea behind this card has pull on it twice. The idea behind that is literally the move in source has a vacuum effect on it.
Yeah.
It looks very flashy. You can catch in like surprising ways with it. And also it virtually always is getting it virtually always is getting you into a pretty solid position by using it because you get a hard knockdown. So the idea behind the hit effect is draw 2, add a card from your hand to gauge. Well, if you crit this, you add a card from your hand to gauge. You now have a gauge you can after flip. And then after pull 2, assuming you hit, you're at range 1, you're now at range 2. You're now at kind of one of your central mix-up ranges because you have DP, IA, IG.
Options.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool setup.
My suspicion is this Ultra is good, you're saying, but I think it has kind of the thing that's going on with Soul's free gauge Ultra, where people like look at this and they're like, I want to be doing this. And they spend all their gauge doing this and they don't save up to play the Ultra.
This is definitely the more exciting part of the character, so.
But yeah, I would not be surprised if this was good. I think a lot of people seeing the character for the first time want to do the, character fantasy.
Makes sense.
I also did tell everyone by putting this boost on this card, oh yeah, you should play the character fantasy. This boost is quick attack, but you have hit draw 2, or this is what's the Ryu's lightning reflexes?
Yes, that sounds right.
Yeah. Lightning reflexes.
Oh, yeah. I think we actually haven't even talked about the action on the spec side.
Oh yeah, there is another part of the backside, which is that after any strike, you basically get to choose whatever position you want if you don't want the +1 speed hit draw 2.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, you have 2 different ways to cash out on your flip, which is relevant because you don't just have to go for the +1 speed, even though that's what it has mostly been talked about. You can also get the move 2, take another action, and then just throw a more straightforward advantage chain, where you can throw cards like Starlit Sky, Assault, this attack, this boost, to just more straightforwardly, go to range 3, throw a good attack, go back to range 3, throw a good attack.
That's moving.
Yeah, because of the modularity of the backside, this boost has a ton of flexibility. And it feels really cool. That's the important part. Because I think if you're going to have a character that has this kind of mechanical complex, I don't know if complexity is the right word, because it's not particularly hard to grasp what's going on with UL, but it is a unique thing that you have to know. You should have a tool that is playing into the cool part of that.
Yeah.
And the big surprising cool part of UL is, oh, she's bouncing everywhere. She's gonna, where the heck does she go? She's so fast. So she should always have a trick in the pocket of being able to do that.
Yeah.
Then the other Ultra Boost, fairly simple. This never causes problems. Now strike hit gain advantage.
It's an Ultra Boost, it's fine.
Yeah. This is a boost that never causes issues in any character ever designed.
Especially when
there are never problems.
Especially not when they can do like 5-speed IA or something.
Yeah, that don't be ridiculous.
It's fine.
Anyway, I wanted Yuel to be able to take a turn after literally any action as part of her identity, because a big part of her thing in Source is after literally anything, she has something she can do. Doesn't matter if it's good, she can do something after any button press.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, you just punch her in the face to stuff it out, but the option is there, and that's this being her theme song, the Dance of 1,000 Years. That's where the name comes from. Is her song. I felt like that was the most appropriate place to represent that idea of, yeah, all of her buttons have a chain afterwards of some description.
I do remember an earlier iteration of this character had advantage on the Exceed UA somewhere. I don't remember exactly how it worked. I think it was also initiate only, but probably like
that sounds right.
Yeah, but having it on the boost, I can see being a bit more standard, so like very central to her kits, central field at least. Ultra boosts are cool.
And it is on the attack that is your cheapest way to just get advantage. Cheapest as in not least expensive, but most like
guaranteed.
Unfair.
Yeah.
You just get it.
Least reactable.
Yeah.
Yep. Sounds like a pretty cool overview of her kits.
Yeah.
I guess moving to Rose for a bit, do you have any thoughts about like how what Aevusonian said about the function everything's supposed to serve felt in practice?
By and large, yeah, that I was mostly like, so I saw this character once. I was like, this character is so cool. I need to bring her to the potluck because I was feeling like this mechanic of this basically evoking her stances is just like really cool. I think there's a lot of depth to that I think Aevusonian didn't mention, but while you can do this with your specials, and you probably want to because they have crit effects, it also means that basically any crit you do is a mix-up because you're not telegraphing what you're going for. You might just really want to get into the stance. And then additionally, the fact that you get to exceed in this way is really interesting to optimize because you can do stuff like, if you have a good read on what your opponent is going for, you can do something like, okay, you're going to assault in, I'll cross out, I'll be exceeded, I will be at range 3, everything is great. Just lots of little... She feels pretty technical in a way that, like you said, it's not really high complexity. Like, you read this and it's pretty straightforward to understand, but there's a lot of room to express like how you want to play with combining these tools together.
Yeah, I did want her to be like a very expressive character because that's how she felt to me in Source as well. So I am glad to see that this ability shape does bring up like a lot of interesting decision points where critical is a pretty interesting mechanic, and this does something pretty unique with critical that not many other characters do. And it does invent some pretty interesting things. Like we talked about it in the past. The idea of like, if you have 2 gauge and you crit, you're really heavily signaling that you want to exceed. But what if you just like played assault and hit the opponent, and then you just didn't exceed, and then you're just back on 2 gauge? Well, you can crit again, and now you're threatening to flip this turn instead. From a potentially different position than what the opponent might expect.
Yep, I think that is a lot of like you said, you play with criticals in a way that I don't know. It is different than the way that is explored in maybe season 3.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of learning curve to that. I felt I think I undervalued just critting the specials when I didn't have any ability to get into the Exceed side, because these crits are all, like, not all, but mostly quite strong. Like, there's gain advantage, draw 1 and gain advantage, and this is just like a nice value add, at least for, like, even if you're on 1 gauge and you're critting at range 2, you still have a mix-up because you might just really want to hit them a little harder. Could matter.
You do have a pretty reasonable chance of getting your resources back if you can hit them again later.
Yep.
Kind of going back to that, the idea of the critical adding kind of an additional mix-up even if you don't play a special. I know that's something that some other Granblue characters have used a bit or explored a bit, namely Gran, I believe.
Yeah.
Gran
does a pretty similar thing.
Something that a lot of people I think liked about Gran in terms of like, you have kind of a reason to crit bluff, not necessarily even, but like you get value out of using your resources in that way. So, kind of with that segue, do you have any comments on like how this feels as like a Granblue mechanic, the use of critical?
Okay.
Just the critical mechanic as Granblue.
I guess like not too Yuel specific. Like, I guess how did you feel adapting the unique aspects of Granblue Fantasy versus Rising? I forget the order of the words. Using criticals.
Rose, you were gonna say something?
Go ahead, since you go first.
Okay. I feel like crits are like a really, really natural adaptation of the way Granblue works. Because to me, Granblue is like the most Street Fighter anime fighter ever. It is surprisingly grounded and neutral, despite having the big whack anime buttons. Like, it is a game that has Mistfiner as a special a character can use.
Mhm.
And then also that character is a grounded neutral footsies character.
I think that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like on a purely feel level, critical as like the more weighty kind of mechanic plays into that in a similar way to how it works in Street Fighter. And then also, as far as the game itself, like the mechanic in Granblue Fantasy of, oh yeah, you have specials, and you can spend resources, either cooldowns or literal gauge, to make them have different properties or be better. That's critical.
Makes
In a
sense.
very literal way, in Granblue, you have like, this is your special, this is your heavy version of special, which puts it on cooldown for longer.
Yep.
And then you could spend some gauge to make it a critical as well.
Yeah.
And it's like, this feels like a very, probably more like, it's a very one-to-one adaptation. I think the Street Fighter thing is actually a more important reason why it should look this way than it being so literally what it does in Granblue. But it is funny that in Granblue is literally a very similar set of mechanics to.
Yeah. EX being heavy and critical
cool
being super moves. Yeah. No, it lines up exceptionally well. And it is something that I kind of want to explore with. I've got some other Granblue characters that I want to make. Kind of playing into that dynamic a bit more, like how Yuel does it, where critical is really interesting thing to explore.
It's a cool mechanic.
Yeah, it helps that this critical as a mechanic has like some of the most design space of any mechanic in the game.
Okay. I guess going back to you all for a small bit at the end, do you have any thoughts about this current state of the design? I know you mentioned you have some changes you're testing already, but you think like this version of it felt successful in terms of how she played during Potluck?
More or less, yeah. There are changes that I want to make. And a lot of it is just tinkering with this kind of core mix-up, because even though I've said that I'm not trying to adapt the super mix-up heavy current version of UL in Source, mix-ups do still play a part of the concept of pressure and rushdown, right?
Yeah.
Especially in Exceed, where this is like a very prominent thing. And so a lot of these shapes are things that I'm still tinkering with. Minor stat changes, or maybe this card becomes something slightly different, and then the mix-up kind of shifts around that, and then other changes can kind of cascade from that. the general flow of the character is working fine. But it's a matter of the kind of specifics of all of these cards do need to form this closed circle with themselves of things that they do, assisted by normals, of course.
Yeah.
But making sure that all the cards feel like they are doing relevant things and presenting unique threats to the opponent is pretty important. So, with time, a lot of these cards might look different. Who knows?
Bit of a tricky balancing act there.
Yeah. But in general,
I put Aevusonian on the spot. He also talked about this DP. He was like, we talked about this DP a fair bit after the potluck ended. And one thing that I did repeatedly playing this character is try to use that range free to dodge. Like, this has a notable property of when you play this as part of the range free mix up on defense, you are dodging everything but an assault.
Yep.
And it never worked out for me, not even once, as far as I remember. But I believe, Aevusonian, you had some like pretty concrete thoughts about like why you shaped this the way you did that I thought were really interesting.
Yuel as a character to me is a character that does have a lot in her bag of tricks. Like it is basically never ending. That's why she has 6 specials. And also why this DP does that, which is that I felt like it would feel wrong if at any point Yuel was just sitting there looking at the board and she was like, oh, well, I guess I can't beat this spike. Like here's one of the more volatile shapes in Exceed that is really prone to, getting blown up or, ducked. And for her to be like, okay, well, I don't have my assaults up, so I guess I'll just lose to this question mark, felt incredibly wrong. And so this card having this advantage or after close 2 effect on it is literally so that she has this option, no matter how mediocre of an option it is, she can dodge it. She has this trick in her bag that she can pull out.
It also knows that if you feel like it, you can spend 4 gauge to pull 4 with your 3 gauge Ultra, but
yes, that is another thing that does exist in the kit. As like, wow, that's pretty bad. But this is a trick that exists,
Yeah.
Ryu can't throw his Mezzo Hado if you have EX Gentian.
It is a mix-up.
The Viper 3 gauge Ultra also does a thing, actually. Viper 3 gauge armor, it has like an after close 8 on it. And sometimes you do use that to just get in at range at speed 5 and dodge some slow projectile. It is a real thing that matters.
Yeah. And there are multiple of those effects across the kit. Another one is the critical after trigger on Fox Flame is like, why does she have specifically this on after? Well, it's so that you can at like range 6 crit after flip, go to range 5. I don't know what you're doing there, but you can move to take another action. You have these very unusual ways to use your tools that mean you are very rarely actually unable to answer something.
Plenty of options. The toolbox character. Any last notes on D3 and playing her? You mentioned that you felt like she fits the proposed vision very well. Do you have any complaints you want to air on the public?
Any complaints?
Yeah. Any drama?
What am I supposed to say?
This was for us, to be clear, but
we all worked on the Exceed wiki a tiny bit, and you saw they had that section like, pick this character if you avoid pros and cons because they're controversial. Pick this character if you like. Avoid this character if you dislike. Avoid this character if you dislike having a tight economy because, like Aevusonian was saying, you have very few ways to go actually card positive. Like I think that's the reason that one of the reasons that you can have this type of boost. Is like this is not notably like Gatling or something like that, which is very distinctly card positive. This is a CC basically. You spend 2 cards to draw 3, and you strike on that turn, so you have to spend yet another card unless you're willing to wild swing. So you have to be pretty careful with your economy, especially if you're not able to be running over the opponent with exceeding. And then this Ultra, it will be when you're initiating this Ultra, you're getting the economy in the future version. But I felt like this was in the version that was played in the potluck one of your few ways to get out of the kind of economy neutral. It's just like mash this on defense because it's safe, and I think it is a good change to make it on initiate, but it will make it even harder for her to be on top of things without managing your economy carefully.
It's fine. It's fine. I'll make her draw 2 on the ignore card.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and then it'll all work out.
There's a lot of mention of how you have like these hidden change cards, things like you critical, then you can draw cards, but you do need the hits to actually confirm that value.
Yeah, though I do also think that is a cool, like, going back to, you can crit on anything, but you might want to crit on your specials. That's one of your ways to get a little bit out of that change cards paradigm. Yeah, is like, you get a draw as well as this, so you could combine 2 CCs, but you're only paying for 1, sort of thing. Which is cool.
Efficiency.
Yeah. I think this character really feels great when you were like able to do the like Yuel flow, like you're doing pressure, you get ahead of your opponent and you just like stay in advantage state and you're really scary. You do have to pay for it because like again you have to be critical. This is the 2 gauge to exceed. So you can't stay in this forever. But yeah, it's a really threatening advantage state, which is what I would expect of you. Well, advantage state, it's a really scary pressure E state. Like your opponent, you're never going to hit them particularly hard unless you're saving up for this like 4 gauge. But you are going to be making very scary strikes to defend against repeatedly. I think right now it feels a little bad if you have to slow down too much. Like if your opponent just keeps boosting stats at you, you have some tools to like what is the word? Neutral skip with like these.
Neutral skip, yeah.
But if you do get caught just in like a straight up boosting war, like Aevusonian was saying, these are costed such that you boost them when you are advantaged, and your opponent says, "What do I do about this?" If you're boosting these in neutral, you're not feeling so great about them. Though they are like very scary boosts, even so. Like this is light that gives you some positioning, assuming you want it. This is fierce that makes it so your sweep hits, makes it you can be above curve, etc. So yeah, they're worth probably what you're paying for, but you just don't have the economy to support paying for them too many times.
Yeah. They're there because you can be in this advantage state where these are, you're getting double the compression, I suppose, of taking the boost action compared to your opponent when you can pay for it.
Yeah.
Boosting your light that moves 2 opposed to they're just, boosting a light.
Yeah. Sorry, did I actually answer the question? I have no idea if I went off on a tangent.
No, that's perfect. We need the drama.
Okay.
I keep saying stream, but yeah. Any last notes? I think I've covered most of what I want to ask, but
join the custom potluck. It takes place every month. True. And you should join it.
It's really low commitment. You sign up, you play up to 4 games. Honestly, it doesn't even matter if you play all 4 because it's not like a bracket structure. It's just play whoever you want, whenever you want. Yeah, it's a cool event. Thank you, sir, for running it.
Glad everyone enjoyed it. And I did actually kind of brutally, though. Yuel did win this custom vote, but there is a second character that I'll be recording another interview for in a few days. So look forward to that content too. I have no way to break ties. Ideal.
That's good. That means more characters.
So it's less likely that there will be a tie vote just because there's so many people voting.
Yeah.
True.
So that's why you got to join the custom potluck if you made it this far into the interview.
Yep.
How did you get this far if you aren't interested in playing the custom potluck? Like, what's going on there?
Maybe just like looking at them. That's fine.
You gotta play.
Yep. Thanks again for coming to this interview. Congratulations on winning again, Aevusonian.
Yep.
Congrats, Aevusonian, and thank you for having us.
Yeah. And thank you for watching. Have a good time. Happy Exceed.
Bye.
Take care.